guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in today's video I will be covering another true crime story, but before we do get into today's case, I am filming in the daytime just because this is the only time I've got free, so apologies for sounds around me and stuff. But before we get into today's Stanford Gillette in 1973. Gillette engaged in heavy drinking, which stemmed from two traumatic incidents from previous railway jobs in Gulf's Harbour. First, when his best friend was killed in front of him in a shunting accident, and later when he rescued injured occupants of a school bus in Kempsey, which had been struck by a train, killing 6 children. He eventually lost the job due to deteriorating behaviour and performance, but he soon got work at the nearby Aberdeen Abattoir and became close friends with Knight's brother. Often, if Gillette got into a fight, Knight would step in and back him up with her fists. In Aberdeen, she was well known for physically threatening anyone who upset her. Knight married Gillette in 1974 at her request, with the couple arriving at the service on her motorcycle with a very intoxicated Gillette on the pillion. As soon as they arrived, Knight's mother Barbara gave Gillette some advice. "The old girl," Knight's mother said to me to watch out. "You better watch this one or she'll kill you. Stir her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing and you'll... Don't ever think of playing up on her, cheating on her. She'll kill you." And that was her mother talking. She told me she's got something loose. She's got a screw loose somewhere. On their wedding night, Knight tried to strangle Gillette. She later explained it was because he fell asleep after only having intercourse 3 times. The marriage proved particularly violent, and on one occasion, a heavily pregnant Knight burnt all of Gillette's clothing and shoes before hitting him across the back of the head with a frying pan, simply because Ipswich, a city of West Brisbane, where she obtained a job at the Dinmore Meat Works. On 6th of March 1983, they had another daughter, Natasha Marie. In 1984, Knight left Gillette and moved first to her parents' house in Aberdeen, then to a rented house in nearby Muswellbrook. Although she returned to work at the abattoir, she injured her back the following year and went on a disability pension. No longer needing to rent accommodation close to her work, the government gave her a housing commission residence in Aberdeen. David Saunders. Knight met 38-year-old miner David Saunders in 1986. A few months later, he moved in with her and her daughters. Although he kept his old apartment in Scone, Knight soon became jealous regarding what he did when he was not around and would often throw him out. He would move back to his apartment, where she would invariably follow and beg him to return. In May 1987, she cut the throat of his 2-month-old dingo pup in front of him for no more reason than as an example of what would happen if he had ever had an affair, before going on to knock him unconscious with a frying pan. In June 1988, she gave birth to a third daughter, Sarah, which prompted Saunders to put a deposit on her house. Knight paid off the deposit when her workers' compensation came through in 1989. Knight decorated the house throughout with animal skins, skulls, horns, rusty animal traps, leather jackets, old boots, machetes, rakes and pitchforks. No space, including the ceilings, was left uncovered. After an argument in which she hit Saunders in the face with an iron before stabbing him in the abdominal with a pair of scissors, he moved back to the Scone. But when he later returned home to Aberdeen, he found she had cut up all of his clothes. Saunders took a long surface leave and went into hiding. Knight tried to find him, but no one admitted to knowing where he was. Several months later, Saunders returned to see his daughter and found that Knight had gone to the police and unjustly told them she was afraid of him. They issued her an apprehended violence order, an AVO basically, against him. In 1997, Knight became pregnant by 43-year-old former abattoir co-worker John Chillingworth and gave birth the following year to a boy they named Eric. Their relationship lasted 3 years before she left him for a man she had been having an affair with for some time, called John Price. John Charles Thomas Price was the father of 3 children when Knight had an affair with him. Reputedly a terrific bloke liked by everyone who knew him. His own marriage had ended in 1988, while his 2-year-old daughter had remained with his former wife. The 2 older children lived with him. Price was well aware of Knight's violent reputation as she moved into his house in 1995. His children liked her Bryce was fired from the job he had held for 17 years and his boss had no choice. That same day, he kicked her out and she returned to her home while news of what she had done spread throughout the town. A few months later, Bryce restarted the relationship, although he now refused to allow her to move in with him. Imprisonment's legal team